And going back to what I said earlier here with Philip having troubles with his relationship, what we find out through a series of flashbacks is that Philip himself has actually been raised and has learned behaviors of that of a abuser of women, that he was something he picked up from his father. So while we do see displays of regret and remorse throughout the movie, we see that with his girlfriend in particular, he has a hard time coping with the situation that they're in. This synopsis lists his girlfriend as being, liberal? Well, the matter is complicated by him returning home from his mission in Hamburg to the girlfriend's admission that she had slept with 3 other guys and 2 other girls in the time that he was gone. Now, they seem to have had an open relationship, and this is something that isn't, I don't think, fully explored in the movie. It seems that, well, just from the reading that was done regarding this, the author, or rather the director, had in mind the idea that he wanted to make this movie centering on this topic. So a lot of these things seem to be kind of thrown in, and elements that move the movie along to just basically get to the points that he wants to make, or the things that he wanted to explore or film. So a lot of the story isn't necessarily fleshed out the way it should be. We find that the end really kind of comes apart for both myself and my wife. We, after watching it and discussing it, it really fell apart there. We're not sure if they ran out of money or time or just ideas. You have to see the movie to actually see what we were talking about. But at the end of the movie, it fades to black. Then the scene returns, and I don't want to go into it because I don't want to screw it up for anybody that hasn't seen it. But you see the ending of it, and it's just WTF, because it doesn't seem to fit at all. I was happy to note there in the extras for the movie that there was an alternate ending. So I excitedly clicked over and decided to watch that. Well, that's a double WTF ending, because that even made less sense than the initial one. I think they would have been better off just letting the camera fade to black the first time, stopping it there, and leaving you to make up your own mind where the story went from that near closing scene. So that brings me to, who would I recommend this movie to? Though I said hardcore at the beginning, I guess a better description would have been outside the mainstream. There's a few scenes that are tough to watch. There's a lot of gross out stuff. And so I couldn't recommend it still to somebody that was strictly a horror fan that was just looking for gross out, because for them it might be kind of slow. If I was talking to a movie lover, somebody that just claimed, oh, well, I like to watch anything, again, I'd have a hard time recommending it to them. The person that I would recommend it to would be somebody that enjoys psychology and philosophy. Not because it answers any deep psychological issues or philosophical discussions, but it does raise some questions. Even when you get the interaction between Michael and Philip, I think that though Michael's arguments may be a bit spurious, they still raise a few points that are worth talking about, and were things that I found that my wife and I could discuss, but they were things that were left out of the movie itself. What few people had to say about this, looking over the reviews, the people that actually took time to comment on the movie, some of their titles basically said that it was disgusting, vulgar, and fascinating. This other one says I can't say disgustingly for some reason now. Wait, I just did. Disgustingly, intriguingly vulgar. Wow, disgusting and vulgar come up a lot in people's discussion of this. This one says, mildly unpleasant fetish thriller made me hungry. Well, now they're just being a dick. At any rate, this movie got a 5 out of 5 on the Internet Movie Database. And I have to say, my wife came up with a far better ending for this film than it came up with for itself. I think they lost their point. I think that the writer, the director, whoever was in charge who initially took this idea, they had an idea that they wanted to portray a feeder and gainer relationship on film, and that's certainly what they did. But even by its own standards, by its own rules, if you will, it seemed to contradict those at the end. Like I said, it really comes apart during those final scenes. So that's disappointing. I think that it was a good idea, poorly executed. And we know that happens often in many films, especially in horror films. The actors in this movie did a fine job, the main characters, that is. Among them was Gabby Millgate. She portrayed the gainer in this, and though you may not know the name, you may have seen her in Muriel's Wedding, and she did a fine job in this. She's normally a comedian, and so for her playing this was pretty rough, actually. And once you see the movie, you can see why. There's actually there's a section in the extras of this where they do an infomercial, and that's pretty funny. You see them making light of the situation, the movie, the premise of the movie a little bit, and I can absolutely see where that would have been necessary to hold on to your sanity through this. She took on a very depressing role, but I think she came out as being definitely the character with the most humanity, despite her odd paradox of, being fed to death, basically. The main male characters in here, Patrick Thompson and Alex O'Lawton, were definitely fine performers. They put in a good show, but again, it's just the writing that comes down to, when it comes down to those final scenes, it just all seems to come apart and doesn't quite make sense. So I myself would probably give this movie, well, initially I would have said that I would give it about a 6, maybe, but after actually going through the review and discussing a little bit more with my wife, I guess I'm going to have to give it a 5, maybe a 4.5 with a poor recommend scale to it. Again, you got to find that right person. You need to know your audience. You need to know who you're suggesting it to recommend it to them. And it's not for everybody, and definitely not for kids. For the Garbage In, Garbage Out segment, oh my God, I am a bully beatdown addict. The last couple of days on MTV, they've had a couple of marathons of bully beatdown. last night I was up till 3 in the morning watching that stupid show. But, oh my gosh, it is hilarious. So, wow. Anybody that hasn't seen this show yet, you gotta check it out. Because it's just the greatest thing. You see these guys coming in talking smack, and from me, somebody that's actually, well, I'm sure lots of people have actually rolled on the mat, but it was a real eye-opening experience the few times that I got a chance to do that with some jiu-jitsu guys. And let me tell you, there's nothing that'll wear you out faster. So to see these guys that are used to talking all this crap and pushing people around and taking advantage of people based on their size, seeing them get in the ring with somebody the same size that's actually a trained fighter, man, it all comes down to endurance. And you know that these guys haven't had it. They may get into a fight at a party where they get lucky and throw a couple of punches and somebody that's not ready for it. When they step into the ring with somebody that is ready for it, it's hilarious. So now that I'm back to work, I've had a chance to catch up on all my podcasts for the week. And I've gotten back to listening to the audiobooks that I was listening to earlier on. Some of the Stephen King stories that I'm listening to are Harvey's Dream, Rest Stop, and Stationary Bike. I gotta say, Harvey's Dream, I know it's only about 10 pages, and even less since I'm having the story read to me via the book on CD, but I just couldn't get into it, and I lost interest part way, so I just skipped ahead to the next one. The next one I listened to is Rest Stop, and it started out a little slow, but it managed to catch my attention and finished very It's kind of a throwback to the days when he was writing as Richard Bachman, or if you ever saw the story Cat's Eye, you might be familiar with the story about the tennis pro and the gangster, where the gangster finds out that the tennis pro has been sleeping with his wife. So he offers him an amount of money to cross the building on the outside all the way around the building. So anyhow, this one sort of has that feel to it. It takes place in Florida, where an author is riding home after giving a lecture, and he stops at a rest stop. Hence the name, I guess. Anyhow, he stops at a rest stop and overhears somebody abusing either their girlfriend or their wife. So is kind of caught in one of those moments in your life where, what do? Do you step in? Do you just call the police? So anyhow, I don't want to spoil it or go into any more detail than that, but that's a good story that I feel finished very strong. The next one, Stationary Bike. And again, I just couldn't get into it, and I'm not sure if it's me that I just don't have the patience for the writing right now, or whether it's just Stephen King maybe wasn't at his best when he wrote these stories. These weren't all put together at one time, though. They were done over the course of the last few years and compiled from several different sources. So, Stationary Bike, story of a man who's overweight, told by his doctor that he needs to lower his cholesterol, lose weight, and becomes obsessed with exercising and bike riding in particular on a stationary bike. Again, hence the name. And again, I couldn't finish it. It started out interesting enough, but there just wasn't a hook to draw me in past the first 15, 20 minutes of it. So, yeah, all in all, I can't really say that I'm overwhelmed with these stories. However, the one I am looking forward to is N, and that's the letter N. So a little time has passed, and I've continued on with the Just After Sunset audiobook.